If you won't come and say Edus for me, that Reuven said, Litain li Masaimasus. He didn't say he's chayiv to pay me. He said that I will give you. Someone made a commitment, I will give Shimon. Reuven made a commitment, I will give Shimon 200 zuz, and now Shimon wants Adam to say Edus that in fact Reuven did make that commitment. But he hadn't given. Hare elu p'turim. These Adam would be potter from Shavuos ha'edus. She'ein chayav ela al tfiyas moment can be gotten. It has to be a tfiyas moment, not a commitment that someone promised to give you a gift. It has to be that you're money that was yours. Look, Rashi. She'ilu edu you hayu mechayiv in moment. If they would say edus, they would be mechayiv Reuven to pay Shimon money. Avalim zeh heidu lo hayu mechuyev. I did promise that I was going to give you money. Too bad I changed my mind, right? So even if that would be proven, it wouldn't lead to a payment being made. Zogt Gemara, Zogt Mishnah weiter, Mashbi ani aleichem, kishetedu lu edis, shetavoyu v'seiduni. Someone goes over to two Edim and says, I'm being mashpir you that if sometime in the future you will have testimony that will be beneficial to me, that you're swearing that you're going to deliver that edus. Hare elu p'turim. This is also something that wouldn't lead to a korban shvuah. Mipnei shekodma shvuah la'edus. Because in this case, the shvuah came before the edus, and the Gemara is going to show through psukim that the edus has to be there before the shvuah. Amad bevesek knesses. What if somebody needed edus? And he got up in Bishmeresh and he clapped this on the bima. You know who I'm talking about. If you know an edus that I need, and you make a communal shvuah, okay, the Gemara again will explain this. Omar l'shnayim mashpia ani aleichem ish ploini uploini shimatem yoidim li'edus shetavoyu v'soiduni. If he says, he tells two people, I'm going to spare you that if you know edus for me, you will say edus for me. And then they said, Shvuah she'ein onu yoidin loch edus. They said, they responded by swearing that they don't know any edus. Ve'hein yoidim lo edus, and they know edus, but it not firsthand. They know hearsay. Eid mi pi. Oy shahaya echad ben kar b'fasel. Sorry, that's right. But that's why it's going to say Harei L'Pturim. What you're probably referring to us is the Gemara already told us. The Mishnah already told us that's the Ruin Lahayit. So why is the Gemara here bringing up pretty much the same thing? It's just another example of why someone's not Roy Latest. But it's all the same thing that the Mishnah said at the beginning. Shalach biyad avdoi. Oi. So Shalach biyad avdoi means rather than the Toiveya solicit the Shvuah, he sent a shliach, his aide, to solicit the shvuah without harsha. Oy she'amar lam hanitfa mashpiani leichem shematim yodim loy edus shetavoyu v'saidu. Again, we had we had quoted this Mishnah in the Gemara a couple of days ago. Harei l'pturim, these are all edim that will be part of the korban shvuah at yishmu mipiateve. Taner Rabbanan. Now we're going to elaborate on this Mishnah in a brisa and show the sources. Taner Rabbanan mashpiani aleichem im loy Tavayu v'sa'iduni she'amar ish ploini litein li masayim zuz v'loinos. Yachal yehu chayavin. I might have thought that someone like that would be chayiv a korban shvuah. Zok to Gemara, zok to Heilige Brayso, Tomash V'lon sechta. It says sechta l'gzeir shava. This was, I believe, Sechta from Shavuos HaPikadon, right? Who quoted the Gzeir Shava of Sechta from Shavuos HaPikadon to teach us that it has to be on a Tfiyas moment? That was not Rabbi Eliezer. He was from the Oyin, and it wasn't Rabbi Kiva because he also agreed to the Oyin. It was Rabbi Shimon. It was Rabbi Shimon, right? Okay. Nemar Kan Sechta, v'nemar Lalon Sechta, Ma Lalon B'Tfiyas moment. Just like by Shavuos HaPikadon, you either swearing that gave you a pekatan, you didn't give it back to me, or yad, or you stole from me, or you borrowed money from me, or you worked for me and you didn't pay, or I worked for you and you didn't pay me. It's all tvias money that's owed to me. V'yesh loy, and I have that money. Af kam b'tvias mammon v'yesh loy. It has to be a tvias mammon, and v'yesh sheyesh loy mammon alov. You're holding on to my money, not that you just made a commitment to gift me money. Okay, that explains the reasoning for the first case. The second case, and that is, I'm being mashpia you about a case in the future. Should you someday in the future have some edus for me, mashpia ni alechem kishetedu li edus. Tanarabot mashpia ni alechem kishetedu li edus shetavoyu v'soyidu me. Yochal yuchav. I would have thought that person is chayav a carbon shvuah. Tamalemer v'shama koil ola v'hu. When did he make the shvuah? V'hu. When he was an aid already. He was an aid at the time that he heard the shvuah. Oyra oyada. So we learned Misha Kadma Edus L'Shvua, V'lo Kadma Shvua L'Edus. The pasuk is laying it out chronologically that by the time you heard the Allah, you had already been an aid, meaning you're swearing about something that had occurred prior to your shvua. Amad Beveis HaKnesses the Amar Mashbi'ani Aleichem. So someone just reached out to a crowd. I'm making you all swear that you don't have any edus for me. Even if amongst this group there are legitimate edim, so I get up and say, you know who you are. You know who you are. I'm being mashpia you. It's still a parcel edus. It's still not a chayav a carbon shvua. Fake the more pshita, and Rashi explains pshita. The Eloi Edav Beinean, my Yitzrech Lemisni, the Masnisin Turin, right? If the Edim aren't there, of course there's no chi of carbon because nobody swore falsely. So of course it's only speaking if the Edim are there. The Koi Elohu. He didn't just get up and announce to the whole shul. He stands right beside them. He stands right beside them when he does this. As Rashi Oimid B'tzad Edom, he's standing right there. Zukimar Mauda Tema. Command the Amr Luhudami. If he says it right in front of them, it's sort of obvious that he doesn't want to name them, but they know and he knows that he's talking directly to them. Kamashwala. Look, Rashimau Tema. Vadai lahanach the kaimik abei kamar. Of course, he's talking to them. And that's considered that he did pinpoint the Edom from whom he is demanding Kishua. Zok to more weiter. Tanya Nami Hachi. We learned a bride that supports this similarly. If you saw a group of people, the Edom Beineim, and in this group of people are two people who he recognizes as Edom that have testimony for him. The Amarlan, and he told them, Mashbi ani aleichem imatam yodim li edu shetavoyu v'sa iduni. I'll be mashbir you that if you know edus for me, you must come and say edus. Yachol yehu chayav, and you would have thought that these Edom are chayiv. Tamad loymar v'hu eid. Who aid? The aid is identified, pinpointed. Here he wasn't miyachet his demand to those specific aid. What if he speaks out? It's so he's individually itemizing everybody, like invitations that no, you should see this invitation as if it's personal. They hang it on the bulletin board, right? It has to be outlined clearly. Rashi. I'm sorry? From which first case? Why is Roa Sia Shalbani Adam different in the first case? Well, no, because here he said Kolo Imdimkan. He said, I'm being mashpia every single one of you. If I just said whoever knows Edus, but here he's including everybody. Even those that might not be Edom. So let's see Rashi. The afal gav de gabayu koi, even though he's standing right over them to him. Ra siyah shal b'nei adam ve'edov b'neihem. Al korchach b'tekoi gabayu kamar. This brisa of Ra siyah shal b'nei adam has to be where he's standing right there in front of those Edom. Why? B'deka amar seifa afilu kol ha'im kan tamad lemer v'u'ed v'ayitachos in the Reisha, he must have been standing specifically next to the Edom he was talking about. Keeping the Amar, Oimdim Kan, if he spoke out the word, oh, I'm sorry, if he said people are, I misspoke. If he said people who are standing right here, that would be good. So you ask what's the difference? In fact, you're right. It's different. He said if he says those people that are standing right here, so there he's being more specific. He's not referring to the entire crowd. Those people who are standing right near him, he did identify them specifically, and therefore but if he didn't speak out, so I touch meaning everybody in this room. No, it means whoever's standing right here near me. If he didn't speak that out, because you were not miyached the edim from whom you are demanding this Shavuot. So what's the case of the Mishnah? And they made a shvuah, but they were not kosher edim because it was either eid mi'eid, they had hearsay, or echad ben karv apostle. So Taner Rabbanan, Omer Lashnaim, Mashbi'a ani aleichem ploini uploini, im atem yoidim li edus. If you happen to know edus for me, shetavoyu shvita iduni. The hein yoidim lo edus, and they know the edus, but not in a way where they would be kosher edim, because it's eid mi'eid. Oish oya echad ben karv apostle. Yochel yehucha yavin. You will think that there would be a chiyuv of korban shvuah for this. Im lo yagid v'nos havaynoi beruyin lahagid beruyin lagodo hakasav medaber. They have to be kosher edim. So Rashi im lo yagid ksiv molei lid lemidrash bay loy loy. So it's we learn since the lamed the loy has a vav and an aleph there. So we darshan im loy yagid if you don't say edus on his behalf. On his behalf, meaning in such a way where it will be impactful for him, because the edus would be accepted and Bezdin would act upon it. But however, an eid who's not ruin lahagid, his edus wouldn't be accepted because either he was puzzled for one reason or another, or it was an eid mi'eid and hearsay. He's not accepted by edus, therefore he wouldn't bring a korban shvuah. Shalach b'yad avdoi. So here it wasn't the proper toiveya. Taner Rabbanan shalach b'yad avdoi. Oisha amar lehem nitfa. The wrong person asked. Must be on the aleichem. Shematim yoidim lo edus. So it's not lead this time because it's the nitfa saying if you don't edus on behalf of my teveya. Shetavoyu v'seidu yochel yuchayavin tamalemer im lo yagid v'nos avoynoi. My Talmud. How do you see that from there? I'm a blazer im loy yagid ksiv. Im loy lo yagid. If you don't say edus on behalf of the teveya v'nos avoynoi. If im lo acher lo yagid potter. But if you're denying edus for somebody else, that is not a net a korban shvuah. So I think I read the Rashi in Lo Yagid early. I think the Rashi I read in Lo Yagid is referring to this case. The first limud is Lo Yagid. If you're not going to say Hagot the edus, meaning a kosher Hagot the edus, but in Lo Yagid means you have to say edus on behalf of the person who's summoning you. If you don't, only then are you chayav a korban shvuah. But if the wrong person summoned you, it will not be mechayiv your korban shvuah. Even with the shliach, but we learned earlier with a harsha, when you're giving somebody a power of attorney, then in fact he could demand the shvuah. Kazak more weiter. Mashpi'ani aleichem. He used the word mashpi'ani on the aleichem, or he used the word mitzav on the aleichem. So now the Gemara, the Mishnah is going to be focusing on what are the proper syntax to articulate a shvuah to be mechayiv a korban shvuah, and which expressions of shvuah would not qualify. Mashbi'ani aleichem, mitzava ani aleichem, oisarchem is miloshen. I'm tying you to this. Miloshen oisfi lagefen heinoi. Oisarchem ani harei elu chayav. These are all good expressions of a shvuah. However, if you said Bashamayim Uvaretz, then Harei Elu Pturin, then you would be potter. The Shemayim and Uretz are your witness that you know edus from him. But Aleph Dalet, what if he said Mashbi'ani Lechem in the name of Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, or B'Yud Kei, or B'Shakai, or B'Tzvakos, or Bechanun Verachum, or Be'erech Apayim, or Berav Chesed, Uv'chol hakinuyin harei elu chayov. I mashpia you in the name of either Hashem, Aleph Dalet, or Yud Kei, or Shakai, or in the name of Tzavos, in the name of Chanun, in the name of Rachum, in the name of Rechapayim, in the name of Rav Chesed, or any other kinu used to describe the Rebbeinu Shalom, that would constitute the proper expression of a Shvuah. Okay? Okay, Zok Gemara weiter, Zok Mishnah weiter. Hamakal b'chulam. What if someone was mevorach es Hashem? Right, so we learned you have to be mevorach es Hashem b'shem in order to be over. So Hamakal b'chulam Rashi mevorach es Hashem be'echad mehem in one of these nuschoyos that we just said would be acceptable for a korban shvuah vedas. Kagoin yaka ploni is ploni. If you remember, that's how the Mishnah described it in Sanhedrin. Say yaka ploni is ploni. Ploni is the Shem Hashem that you're using. Shezehu chiyuvah keshemekal shem b'shem. That is the chiyuv when you're mekal shem b'shem. Okay, chayiv misa. In such a case, you'd be chayiv misa with any one of these shems. Divrei Meir, the chachamim poitrin, but the chachamim say it will be potter. Hamakal, you have to only Shem Hashem, not a kinui, but a kinui would be good enough for the korban shul vedas. Only Makal. Hamakal of v'imai. What about someone who's Makal of v'imai? Now, each kalala that the Torah is mechayiv you for, the Torah might have different structures of which shvuah qualifies to violate which aver. So Makal of v'imai, b'chulam chayiv. There you're chayiv with everything different. Meir lachacham and poiter. And again, the chacham want to get pater with the kinuyim. Okay. What about Makal Atzmai? What is Makal Atzmai? Dr. Rashi Mefarish v'Gemara. Okay, Makal Atzmai v'Chaverai b'Chulan over Beloisase. No matter what type of nusach he uses, an Aloisase he will be over no matter what. What do we say? Yakaka Hashem. The Rashi is Yaka Hashem Alakim. That's a loshon that's used in the Teichel, right? It says Yak Hashem b'Shchinu b'Alafas, right? So it's a loshon of klala. Yak Alakim Goris b'Masisim v'Chein Kasav v'Nakud Seder Mishnah Mugas v'Nafkanas. I found it in a very reliable print of Rashi that this is how it's read. Okay, so Yak Hashem Alakim v'Chein Yak Alakim Zuhi Allah Hakshuva b'Torah. That is an Allah that it says in the Torah. What does that mean, Dr. Rashi? Imam al-Adam echad min ha'mekrois shebeklalis. Someone said, Yaka Hashem b'shafechas u'v'dalachas u'v'kadachas, with all the different type of inflictions, if imloi sa'iduni, if you won't come to Eidus. V'chein Yaka Hashem echad koyrei klolos shebetayr. What if someone was reading the klolos of the Torah? V'yomer la'edim, and then he told Edim, Kein Yaka ke Hashem should punish you the same way as the list that I'm reading now, imloi sa'iduni, Zuhi Allah, this is the Allah, the Ksiv Bahem, Kechal Allah Isabris. Zuhi Allah Ksiv B'Torah. What if you said the opposite? Al Yatka, you shouldn't be punished if you do come say this for me. So that's the Mechalal Lav Ata Shemei Al Yatka, Vivarechacha, Yetiv Lach, Rab Meir Machayev Achacham Ben Poik. Okay, Vivalted. Or he said, either Hashem shouldn't punish you, or he said, if you say this for me, so Tazan Gebench with Allah Bruches, Mashma, that if you don't, I want to zap you, so that's a machlokes as well. Imagine when Moshe Bloomfeld is really in the middle of being Teicha, yeah, but away, Gesagt more right here. Mashbiani Aleichem. My Kamar. So what exactly is he saying? Mashbiani Aleichem, Besavani Aleichem, what is exactly the words that he's speaking out? We have crystal clear what we're talking about. My cover. Amar Vidu Halchi cover. Mashbiani Aleichem b'shvua ha'amura b'Torah. So that's what it means. Mashbiani Aleichem. It means I'm being mashbia you with the shvua that's stated in the Torah. So I didn't even say Shem Hashem. So where's the Shem Hashem? Torah says I'm being mashbia you with the shvua as described in the Torah. So he's referencing a shvua that would be a good shvua. Or mitzavah nelechem mitzavah b'amur b'Torah, or I'm being mitzavah you with the tzava hamur b'Torah. So Rashi ela mitzvahs the parshas nedarim. So it uses the lashon tzava in the parsha of nedarim. Or israchem ani be'iser ha'amur b'Torah. I'm tying you to the iser that says in the Torah. So that's what these nuschos that the Mishnah are referencing. Amar le Abaye. So Abaye told Rav Huda, Elohad the Tani Rav Chia. That Rav Chia said, if someone said koivalchem ani, if he used koivalchem ani aleichem, hare elu chayovin, he says that would be a similar nusuch. That would also be mechayiv and koivalchem. Koival means chains. I'm chaining you. I'm chaining you to the shvuah, but he doesn't say that. He didn't say that. He said, I'm just chaining you. Harei l'chayavin koivel by Raisa miksiv. It has a lashon of iser in the Torah. It has a lashon of savo in the Torah. So you could explain it by saying that if I say that, so I want to be mitzav you like the tzivoy that it says in the Torah. So you're referencing a proper shvuah. I said mashpiani lechem. I'm referencing a proper shvuah, but there is no place in the Torah where the word koivel is used in conjunction with a shvuah. So why is it that Reb Chia said koivalchem would also be a chiv shvuah? Koivel be'araisa miksiv elo amar baya hochi kamar. This is what it means. Mashpiani alechem b'shvuah, mitzavani alechem b'shvuah, oisrachem ani b'shvuah, koivalchem ani b'shvuah. So the way you interpret his words is when he said mashpiani alechem, he's not referencing the shvuah in the Torah. What he's referencing is his own words. Mashpeani aleichem. I am being mashpiyu. How? With a proper shvuah that has the proper syntax. So too, when I said kavalchem ani, you finish his words for him. What he meant to say is, I'm tying you down, I'm chaining you down with a proper shvuah. So even though he doesn't say Shem Hashem, he's referencing a proper shvuah. So Rashi Asachem ani b'shvuah maskers Hashem be'echad mikol al shonis halol. So I take it back what I said. Rashi says not what I said. Rashi is beferish. You mention Shem Hashem. So when you say Mashpiani Alechem, you mean Mashpiani Alechem b'Shem Hashem. You say Mashpiani Alechem b'Shem Yud Kevavke, right? Or Koivalchem Ani b'Shem Hashem b'Shvuah, right? Okay. So just his introduction to the Shvuah, but he's actually articulating a proper Shvuah. Zok Tamar Vater, B'Aleph Dalet B'Yud Kei B'Shakai B'Tzvakos B'Chanan V'Rachum B'Erech Apayim V'Ravkas. Fragt the Gemara, Lememra the Chanun V'Rachum Shemus Ninu. Are you telling me that Chanun V'Rachum are Shemus of a Kodesh Baruch Hu? There might be attributes of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. They might describe his behavior, but is that his name? Urmini Yei Shemus Shenim Chakim. There are certain shemos that if they're written, you're allowed to erase them. We all know, it's fundamental, we all know you're never allowed to erase Shem Hashem, right? But not every Shem Hashem has Kedusha that would have that prohibition. Right? The way we know that you cannot be poichik is because it says that in the beginning of Dvarim, it says you're supposed to destroy all of our desires, Matzevoshim, it has all these lashonis, and then after a whole list of how you're supposed to destroy and demean avodah zarah, it says L'sasum kain Lashem Alekechem. All that destruction that we say you should do to avodah zarah, don't do to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Elohein Shema Shenim Chacham. What are examples of shemus that have kedusha? Did you know a lot about? Kloin Kael, Alekecha, Alekim, Alekechem. Eya after Eya, which is interesting that that's a lashon of Shem Hashem. Where does it say that? I believe it says that when Moshe Rabbeinu was asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when Pari asks me, who's this God of yours, that I should listen to him, so Hashem used those words. Aleph Dalet, V'Yud Hey, which is the beginning letters of Adnus and Yud Keva, okay? Shakai, Tzavakos, Harei Elo Einim Chach. All of these shemus you would not be allowed to write out. Avol, what if you used words that describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Hagadol, Hagibar, Hanoira, Ha'adir, V'Hachazak, V'Ha'amitz, V'Azuz, Chanun, V'Rachum, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed, Harei Elo Nimchokim. So if these are shemus that are Nimchokim, so they're not real shemus. If they're not real shemus, how could our Mishnah say that invoking the name of Chanun Varachum, it's going to be a legitimate Shvuah. There's a Gemara, Amar Abaye, Mas Nisin b'mi shehu Chanun. You didn't swear, I'm being mashpiyu in the name of Chanun. I'm being mashpiyu in the name of the entity that is considered a Chanun. So that is referencing the Rebbeinu Shalom. But Chanun itself is just an attribute that does not have any internal kedusha, and therefore you could erase it. B'mi shehu rachum kom. That's what the teveya means to say. As Rashi says, "V'lav the Chanun shemu." Rather, he's saying, "I want you to swear in the name of the entity that is a rachum, that is a Chanun." Amalei Rava ihachi. So once you're going to say that, so why b'shamayim u'ba'aretz is no good? Why don't you say the same thing? B'misha shamayim v'aretz shaloi. Come on. So because it's a very big difference. Hachiyash, Hasam, Racham and Chanun are not objects. They're not tangible objects. They're ideas, right? They're attributes. So there, kivan the lekamidi achrina, the iki Racham Chanun, since there's no other object that you could reference with the name Racham and Chanun, it must be that what he meant was the entity that has those attributes. Vadai b'mi shehu Chanun, vadai b'mi shehu Racham Kamar. That must be what he's saying. But Hocha, when you're saying Shemayim V'aretz, given the Ego Shemayim V'aretz, there is an actual Shemayim that you could be celestial beings. You could swear in those celestial beings, not in the name of Hashem. So therefore, Shemayim V'aretz Kamar. When he says Shemayim V'aretz, he means that. But when he says Racham Chanun, it's clear from what he's saying itself that he's referring to the entity that is a Racham, the entity that is a Chanun. Tanarban. Because of it says Elef Labad Milikim. So Aleph Lamed, to Aleph Lamed Milikim. If someone wrote Aleph Lamed, he was writing the word Elikim, and he wrote the letters Aleph and Lamed. As Rashi says, Hizchal Lichtov Elikim, because of Aleph Lamed. Or Yud K Me Hashem. He was writing the Yud K Vav K, and he only wrote Yud K. Now, if you notice, unique about these letters, Kale is also Shem Hashem. Yud K by itself is also Shem Hashem. That's enough of a written down that you can't be moichik. Even though you didn't write the whole Yud Kevavke, you didn't write the whole Elikim out. Nevertheless, these are Hashem by themselves. But Shin Dalet from Shakai, which doesn't mean anything, or Aleph Dalet me Adnus, or Tzadi Beis from Tzavokos, because you haven't, those two letters themselves have not yet written out the full Shem Hashem. That's right. So it definitely doesn't mean Hashem. Rabbi Yosy says, Tzavakos Kululim. The whole word Tzavakos is not Hashem of Hashem at all. He disagrees with the whole premise on that word Tzavakos, so he would say Tzavakos, not Tzavakos. I remember Akiva Wagner, Zatzal, used to always tell me when I would use the word kale, like base kale, he says, do you say ginger kale? If you don't say ginger kale, you could say base kale too. So Dr. Gemara, Rabbi Yosy Omer Tzavakos or Tzavakos Kula Nimchak Shaloi Nikra Tzavakos El Hashem Yisrael. You know why we use the word Tzavakos to describe the Rebbeinu Shalom? Because he's the Rebbeinu Shalom over the armies of Hashem. Shenemar by Tzesi as Tzavosai as Ami B'nei Yisrael Merit Mitzrayim. So Kadosh Baruch Hu refers to Klal Yisrael as his army. That's why we reference the Rebbeinu Shalom with that name. But it's not really Hashem of Hashem. Amar Shmuel Ein Halacha K'Rabbi Yosy. We don't pass on K'Rabbi Yosy, and Tzavakos is the name of Hashem. Taner Rabbanan. Kol HaTafel Hashem. Any prefix or suffix to a name, Bein Milafanav or Bein Milachrav, Harei Zadim. What's an example? Lafanav. What if someone around Zamru Lashem? That lamed of Zamru Lashem, the lamed you can erase. Ketad Lashem, the lamed is Nimcha. Bashem, the base is Nimcha. Vahashem, the vav is Nimcha. Me Hashem, the mem is Nimcha. Shehashem, the shin is Nimcha. Ha-Hashem, Ha-Hey is Nimcha. Ke-Hashem is the Chav is Nimcha. So those are examples of prefixes to the name of Hashem. What about La'achrav? Ketzat Elokeinu. So the not involved is Nimcha. Elokehem. So that's the possessive suffix. Hey mem nimchak. Elokechem chof mem nimchak. Acher moirim la'achrov ein nimchak. Elokechem, all of the suffixes do take on the kedusha shekvar kitcho Hashem. Once there's the kedusha Hashem that this is added onto, that already takes on kedusha. Amar Avuna halacha ka'acherim, that you would not be able to erase the chaf mem of Elokechem or the suffix of any name of Hashem. Zogt Gemara weiter. Avram the Latya the Novois. Yeah, the chaf mem.
No, it's part of the name.
So if someone wrote Elokechem, you can't even erase the chaf and the mem.
Right. Chaf mem is by itself.
Yes, there's no kedusha to the chaf mem. It's only because it's been added on to the name of Hashem. But the La Hashem, the Lamed before, you didn't add on to the name of Hashem. It was there before the name of Hashem was there. And I guess you don't say once you wrote the name of Hashem afterwards, it now adds kedusha to the letter before that. You don't. Avram Delatya Lenovois Begivas Binyamin Shloima Daniel Sim. So let's see how these come to play. Kol Shemois Hamur B'Torah Be'Avram. All of the Shemois that you will see in the Torah in reference to the Torah discussing Avram Avinu are Kodesh. Chutz mizeh, except for one expression of the Shem Hashem, we have to go through the psukim. Shu choil shenemar vayomer Hashem im no matzasi chen beinecha, and that was referring to the malachim who came, and he said al no savar me alavdecha. That was referring to the malachim. Zokt Rashi chutz mizeh lemalacham tzoi. Who was Avram referencing when he said Hashem? He was referring to the Malchem Tzoi Kara Adon, right? He called him Adoni. Shekach Bo Lefanov Michael. Who came in front of him? Michael Be'emtza. Michael was the center Malach. The real Miminoi and Rafal was Mismailoi. So that is Lashon Choil. Chanina ben Ache, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Lozer ben Azariah, said in the name of Yishom Rabbi Lozer Amadoi, said in the name of Rabbi Lozer Amru, Av Zeh Kodesh, even this is Kodesh. Zokt Rashi, T'chsiv le'ilminei, vayera Hashem Elov be'elodim Amri, v'yoshe Pesach chol hayom, D'vadach zevihine shnoish aloshim, there are three people, Nitzav Allah, the Amar la Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the way he learns it, which is how we learn it, Hashem, when he said almost Avram Elavdecha, right? We until now touched it that he was talking to the Malachim, please don't leave, please stay by me. But Zok Rashi, who was HaKadosh Baruch Hu talking to? Who's Avram Avinu in the middle talking to when these people showed up? It was HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he excused himself from the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he was talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because first it says, I love Hashem, Hashem was there. He told HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he addressed HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Al Nosaver me Alavdecha. And he asked Hashem, please hamtein li, wait for me here, because I must interrupt our conversation. Right? It's from this pasuk that we learn Gedoylach Nasas Orchem Mikabalos Pnei Shchina. Because Avram Avinu was talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom. He said, Rebbeinu, excuse me 1 minute, I have guests. Let me take care of them. I'll be right back. Right? Another very important limud from this is, why was Hashem coming? What was Hashem doing there? Do we know why Hashem came to visit Avram? He was doing Vakhoila. Did Hashem tell him one word? To Vayer Love Hashem. Let's say what he told him, feel better. He didn't say a word. It doesn't mention one word that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. It says, when Dol Lerman, you don't have to open your big fat mouth when you're coming to be Vakhoila. You don't have to give him advice. You don't have to say, what affair do you think you have to be Misakin for? You could sit there and be quiet. And that's good. It's good enough for Hashem to be Vakhoila. By keeping his mouth shut, you can do the same, and you'll be Yosy l'chol days b'gachayim in the most godly fashion. Because that's all Hashem did. But Yerelov, Zechma visited him. He was there, didn't say a word. Compliments is really interesting.
Vakiko is the opposite of that. They were supposed to speak about that. Vakiko, not supposed to talk about their.
That's right. That's right. You definitely not supposed to say, I don't think you're usually the right doctor. Dr. Gemara. Nebuchadnezzar was by a shiva where someone lost a young 35-year-old wife. She was going through cancer treatments. So some system of shiva. I don't think you really did everything you could have done. You could have. Did you speak to this doctor? He says, one moment. Let me go to the bishop first and ask my wife if she spoke to that doctor too. So to the right.
I have a better one. I don't want to say who on camera, but someone told me recently his wife passed away when she was sick. One woman told him, "I'm so close to your wife. When the cover when the time comes, let me know."
So to the right. The best Chaver Kedisha story is when Heshi's father was in the hospital.
Yeah.
So Boo Boo and Zolti and the whole Chaver Kedisha came to visit. And Heshi says, Tata, get the Chaver Kedisha kim for you yet. So to more weiter. Okay, anyway, after Kodesh. Why? Because it was referencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who Avraham was taking leave from in order to be able to be machmas. So Kamam Azla Hod Omar, Rabbi Yehuda Omarav. Gedoylach Hazorchim Yosy Me'akpalos Pnei Shechina. Kamam Ka'oisei Hazug. It's going according to this pair of Rabbanim that we just quoted that said that Avraham Avinu took leave from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to be able to do achnasas. Kol shemos ha'arim b'loy. So now we're continuing on. All of the shemos that are mentioned in the parasha of Loit are al choil. They don't refer to Hashem, but just referring to the people he was addressing. Chutz mizeshu kadosh, but there is one place where Loit was referencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar v'yomer Loit alayim al na adoni hine na motza avdecha chen beinech. So he says, "Don't kill me. I found chen in your eyes." Who was he referring to? Mishyesh biyodai lahamas ulahachyes. He was referring to the only entity that has control over his life, and Zeh Hakadosh Baruch. Rashi comments on this. Mishyesh biyodai. Vachi Gomar. V'yomer Loit aleim ba'ozneim. Loit told him in their ears, "Al no yihi chen." But the second half of that phrase, he was no longer addressing the people. Then the Chazor Klab HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'amaloi Adoni Hini Na Matza Abdecha, he was pleading to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that they shouldn't kill him. Okay? Kol Shemus HaAmar B'Novais. Novais was someone who we should be intimately familiar with because we engaged him many times in Maseches Sanhedrin. Who was Novais? Novais was somebody who owned a beautiful vineyard in the days of Achav, who was a wicked king. And Achav wanted this beautiful vineyard, and it didn't matter how much Achav offered Novos, he would not sell it. So Achav's machshefa of a wife, Izebel, devised a plan and said, what if we hire false Edom to say that he cursed HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he cursed the king, and then you could kill him and take his property. And if you remember, we invoked this right at the beginning of Sanhedrin, when the Gemara was talking about how you have to scare the Edom not to lie. And you tell the Edom, even the people who are hiring you to do this job, so you think they're all over you, they're being nice to you, they respect you, they themselves look at you like the biggest lowlife, because when Izebel was describing to Achav what she's going to hire, she says, we're going to hire Anoshim B'nai Belial to say the Zedus. So the person hiring you, you think is all nice to you because he's trying to get you to do this for him, and he's paying you, and he's being mechabed you. Really, in his heart, he looks at you like a lowlife. So even your own Hasidim don't respect you. So what happened was with Novais is he was killed. He was killed improperly. Right? The Gemara also used it to discuss the Haruge Malchus. Stamazar, a guy who's killed by Besdin, his Nechasim don't go to the king. But Haruge Malchus, his Nechasim do go to the king. So that's how Achav might have acquired the estate of Novais. And then we had later at the end of the Masechta, we had that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was looking for somebody to take down Achav, Achav seemed to have had tremendous Shavuos Shmaya. He won war after war. So Hashem asked him, how are we going to take down Achav? So Novais jumped up and says, I'll do it. He offered. And what did Novais do? Novais got Nevi'ei Sheker to convince him to go fight a war that he wasn't supposed to, and that's how he died at the end. So Kol Shemesh Hamurim B'Novos are Kodesh. B'Micha, all of the Shemesh that are B'Micha are actually Choil. Again, you have to learn these Psukim and Novi. Rabbi Lezamer B'Novos Kodesh, B'Micha Yesh Mehen Choil, V'Yesh Mehen Kodesh. Okay, period. Let's see if Rashi gives a list of them, but you'd have to learn the psukim inside to know which ones they're referring to. But always ksiv Beirach Nevois Alakim, but Micha it says Beis Alakim, Hashem. So is it speaking about Hashem or is it speaking to Avodah Zarah? That we'd have to look inside. Okay, next. Aleph Lamed Choil. Kagoyin Loi Beis Alakim as Alakai Asher Sizal Alakachim. So these are by Micha. Okay. Aleph Lamed is Choil, Yud K is Kodesh. Chutz Mizeh, except for one case, Aleph Lamed, it's Aleph Lamed, Vu Kodesh, and which pasuk is that? Kol Yemei Hayos, Beis Elokim B'Shilai. Micha's Pesel was active all of the years of Mishkan Shilai, which was many, many years. Okay, next. Kol Shemes HaMuris, Begivas Binyamin. Begivas Binyamin is, I believe, when they had the terrible story of Pelegesh Begiva, and they wanted to destroy, Klal Yisrael wanted to destroy Binyamin, they asked Hashem if they should fight. And the first two times, the Urim says, yeah, go fight, and they got clobbered. And the third time, they asked, should we go fight, and will we win? And the Urim told them, yes, go fight, and you will win. And in fact, they won. Rabbi Lezer holds, they're not all Kodesh. They're Chol. In other words, some of the times, they weren't asking by a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Shuaimer, Kodesh. Rabbi Shu said they're all Kodesh. All three times that they asked Bashem, it's referring to Kodesh. Amar Rabbi Lozer says it's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. How could you say that all three times they were asking a Kodesh Baruch Hu? If they asked the Kodesh Baruch Hu the first time, he said go fight, they would have won. The mere fact that the first time, two times they didn't win, it must be the first two times they asked by the wrong Kodesh Baruch Hu. Amar Loi, Rabbi Yeshua told them, no. They didn't ask They asked Hashem, should we go fight? But they didn't ask Hashem, are we going to be conquered or will we conquer? So Hashem said, go. Hashem wanted them to go. Hashem wanted them to go and get a beating. But where they asked the Kodesh Baruch Hu as well, will we win? His scheme al Yodon, Shenemar Pinchas ben Lozer Koyin, Oymed Lefana B'Yom Mehem, Lemer, Ha'oisif, Oid Lotes L'Melchama, Im B'nei B'Yom Menachi, or Imechtel. Okay. Kol Shloima, Amur Shir Shirim. So again, so there's a machlokes if the first two times when they asked and they got a beating, were they speaking to the Shechina, were they asking the Ur B'Turim, or did they ask an Avodah Zarah? So the machlokes is whether or not the first two times they didn't get what they were told. According to Rabbi Shua, they got what they were told. It's just that they didn't ask if you don't ask the question properly, you don't get a good answer. Okay, Kol Shloima Amur B'Shir Shirim, all of the word Shloima that it says in Shir Shirim, Kodesh. Why? What does it mean? What does Shir Shirim say? It means Shir Shlemi Shashalom Shaloi. So that's where Shir Shirim, that's the Rishtevus of Shirim, Shir Lemi Shashalom Shaloi. So therefore it's all referring to the Melech Malchem Lochem. Chutz Mizeh, where it said Karmi Shali Lefanai Ha'elef L'Chashloima, that's referring to Shlomo himself. Shlomo l'didei u'masayim. So Aleph l'chashlomo, Shlomo l'didei u'masayim l'noitru in this period. Again, I don't know the psukim in Navi, but there it's not a name of Kodesh. Zaktimar Rabbanon. I'm a little bit curious. I don't know what this means. What does this mean, Rabbanon? Does he say? L'Rabbanon hanicham, he left them to the Rabbanim. The Yasku b'Torah echad mishisha shebehem. Okay, so 1/6 to the Rabbanon who are watching the pairs or learning Torah.
I think the good people formerly God. 1,000 of them are for you, and 200 of them.
So it's 1/6 are for the Rabbanim.
Every 1,000 men, like enlisted in his army, he had to leave 200 men to study Torah.
Okay. So he left 2 to learn. Okay, he left 1/6 to learn. Okay, and there are there who say this all the following one that we're about to list is also oil. Avzeh, surely this is choil and the other one as well. He was scared of the shade. I don't know the context, but this is going to be choil. Elahada Amar Shmuel Malchusa the Katla Chad Mishita Ba'alma Loy Ma'amish. I'm a little stuck over here. Since it's 6:53, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip out over here, and I'll figure this out for tomorrow.
Okay, go ahead.
It's good.
What's everything?
Baruch